My name is Nate Wilcox, and I'm the CTO at the Electric Coin Company. Our company develops a cryptocurrency called ZCash. It is similar to Bitcoin, but it has stronger privacy. And as CTO, I'm focused mainly on improving the technology and figuring out how to do that in a way that helps real users, real people. That's that's a wonderful question. I'm learning how, and we're learning how at my company and also across the Zcash project. Um, and we're using a variety of means. One is by talking to companies that use Zcash currently and asking them what we could improve. Another is by performing different kinds of studies of users and potential users. Um, And those are the two main things we've been trying recently. The biggest barrier to improving privacy in technology, I think, has to do with business and business models. Um, there's another important component, which is sort of educating users. But in my opinion, users use the products that their friends tell them about. So it's really the products competing to acquire users. And a big issue that's pervasive right now is uh, the rise of what we might call surveillance capitalism, where these tech companies have access to so much data and they can benefit from selling it or analyzing it. And because they can make money that way, they can continue to improve their products in a way that most users value, even though the users might not realize like the full impact on their privacy. So I think the challenge really is to find ways for businesses to make products that users want that still respect the user's privacy. This question's hard because I actually do believe that the problem really is kind of like a widespread societal problem. And so I actually think it's um, like in one sense, we're all in the same boat. So even people who don't do anything dumb necessarily are still harmed by a lack of privacy. So like one example might be many people use Facebook, or at least many of my friends and family. And in one sense, that's kind of dumb, but everybody does it. So it's kind of unrealistic to expect my family to not use Facebook right now. Um, but I do think an important thing is for people to not value privacy or not understand the implications. I think that is the one thing that sort of grates on me. Um, if I hear people saying like, oh, well, I have nothing to hide, so why would I need privacy? They're sort of implying that only bad people need it. And I think uh, people who say or believe that kind of thing are uh, both naive and also maybe just privileged to not have had to have not faced some of the issues that other people have to face. Technical things, like a very common problem would be reusing the same password on many different sites, uh, and not picking a strong password. So like that's a very common problem, and that's probably like the first technical step people could take to like address to improve their situation. Um, yeah, I could say something like that, I guess. It's a bad habit. Many people have it. Question is so difficult to answer because it's so broad. It's about financial services. I think it really depends on the users and what they need and what sort of environment they're operating in. So for example, in I'm in the United States, the bank I use is like well known. I just kind of rely on that name recognition when I choose that bank. And then I am often relying on uh, just faith in the system that they won't lose my money or cheat me. But the interesting thing is that bank has been found guilty of various kinds of fraud in a widespread manner. Um, so maybe my trust is misplaced there. When it comes to cryptocurrencies, which I know more about, it's a very challenging issue for users because you know, you might use one app that's a wallet that holds Bitcoin and another a wallet that holds Ethereum. And as a user, all you see is the user interface, and it's hard to evaluate um, uh, you know, what risk do you have if you're using this. I would say a really important concept would be to kind of keep track of a mental profile of how risky something might be, and um, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So if you're trying a new cryptocurrency wallet, for example, do your research, read online. There's some standard questions you should know about. For example, is it non-custodial? Does that mean the funds are held by keys that are on your mobile phone or your hardware token or in a backup seed? And in that case, you have to understand that it's very different than a traditional financial system where an institution holds your funds and then you have to convince the institution to access your funds. In the cryptocurrency world, that model can still happen, but there's also this model where you hold your own private key. And that means if you lose it, you can lose your funds, or if that private key is stolen, your funds could be stolen. So this is something new for most users, and it's very important to pay attention to. So um, it's important to keep learning details like this. If you are starting to use cryptocurrency, try to find people who are specialists who love it and have been learning about it and get their opinions or their evaluations, and try to do that with multiple people if you can. Um, and then also for anything new, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So if this is the first time you're experimenting with Bitcoin or Zcash, I would say don't put all of your assets into that, just some to learn about it. Always be ready to potentially lose things if you're learning and exploring and making mistakes. Um, I think that would be like the first kind of advice I would give to people about cryptocurrency, especially. Zero knowledge proof is a way for a computer program to verify some connection between some data without seeing the data directly. So that's pretty abstract. But what it allows is it allows for designing technical systems where we can audit the correctness of something without violating some privacy guarantees. Foremost examples in my mind would be ZCash, which is the first blockchain to use zero knowledge proving technology of the sort that it does. And it allows to have the nodes verify that the ledger is following the rules, just like in Bitcoin. But the difference is in Bitcoin, all of the details of the ledger are public, and that's how the nodes are able to verify the rules. In Zcash, um, there can be private ledger information, but the system can still verify that the rules are being followed. Great question. Freedom and privacy are generally important, and money is just one case of how people collaborate. And privacy is sort of necessary for freedom, in my opinion. It's necessary to allow people to collaborate or relate in whatever manner they choose among themselves. And so that could be, you know, meeting and sharing, like having conversations privately, you know, developing relationships. Much of life is about our connections to people, and much of that is about how we communicate and how we behave, and that deserves a level of privacy to protect everyone's autonomy and like personal integrity. So I think of money as just a sometimes I just think of it as a particularly popular and special way to communicate. Um, and so in that sense, it's sort of just like a thing you can do with privacy. But money is really important in our society and important globally. Um, and without privacy, there's a lot of danger. So um, there's a lot of surveillance about how people spend their money, and that erodes their privacy to a great degree. And I think even people who are aware of, oh, I want privacy for like my Facebook account so that I can interact with my friends, or I want private messaging. Even people with that awareness might not realize how little privacy they have and how much their privacy is infringed upon by the way they use money. Um, and I also think money deserves more than just privacy to enable freedom. Uh, it's important to ensure people have access to money. Sometimes vulnerable populations, their access to money can be cut off in various ways, just by directly cutting off access to how payments work, by not having access to banking or having their access to banking cut off for various reasons. Like one example in the United States is that banks can choose to stop serving customers however they like, since they're private institutions, but they often tend to follow certain patterns. And one example population that's often harmed by this would be like the queer LGBT communities. Sometimes there will be individuals or organizations that are focused on like providing health information, for example, but they kind of get swept up in this net of users that are too risky for the banks, and so they lose access to banking. Another way that access can be eroded is hyperinflation or just mismanaging of a money system, and all of those are important to protect against. And I think that's where cryptocurrency is playing a role in our world, is by giving people options, multiple ways to access payments and storing their money. And privacy is a key part of that.